Geeta, you live in London. You've probably practiced a lot around health and well-being. That's the base
Yep.
conversation that I've had. What got you started?
So I feel like saying it's my first child was really ill. He was allergic to some injection somebody gave him, and he spent 230 days in hospital in his first year. And that's a very long time to kind of not have your child. And I was so young and I had no idea what I was doing. And the only thing that everybody wanted to do was give him more injections. And I just felt constitutionally incapable of giving him more because we grew up, so I grew up in Malawi, which nobody knew till Madonna adopted children from there, and she wouldn't adopt me. And I was like, I've paid my school fees. You should. She was like, no. So and so we grew up on a farm. We had really healthy food, and I'm Indian, so it's the way in which we were brought up and eat and everything. And I was like, well, there must be better ways of making him healthy. And they're like, yeah, there's no cure. He's anaphylactic. He's asthmatic. He's this. He's that. And I was like, there has to be a way. But I was like, I didn't know how to cook. I didn't. I was 20 something. I ate pizza and smoked and drank and didn't have any other ideas. So I had to teach myself, and my son and I kind of learned on the same way, and I just went and reverted back to healthy food, and it just transformed his life completely. And it changed his body. It changed how he reacted to everything. Everything he couldn't do, he did. And he did it ahead of when he was supposed to do it. Then when his body got stronger, his brain would kind of flatline. Like he'd get tired. He couldn't absorb more information. I was like, well, how do we work on that? And it was just a step-by-step process. It took me about 6 or 7 years, actually. And he's phenomenal.
And it must be a really intense experience as a mother to experience that. I'm a new parent. I have a 4-year-old and an 18-month-old, you may know. And if something would happen to them right now, and I would have to take a 6-year journey to really even find a path forward for them, it would be pretty intense. It would be pretty, I don't want to say traumatic, but it's definitely going to be something that will take a toll on me. How was that experience for you as a mother?
Oh, but Ajit, it was worse because he would get cardiorespiratory arrest. He died. He had to be resuscitated. He was in a coma for a week. And I lived in England on my own, so I had no family. I had nobody there and my mother-in-law said it was because we had bad blood. So that went down, you can just imagine. So that went down like a ton of bricks. It was...
Which mother-in-law does not have bad blood?
Right? No, she said I had bad blood. That's
Oh,
when my
you
son was
had
sick.
that.
And I was like, okay.
Wow.
So that went down badly. So it was horrendous. Honestly, I look back and it was horrendous. And I used to sleep at the hospital all the time because in those days you weren't allowed to sleep at the hospital. So they had these terrible incontinence mats and I would put them on the floor next to him and sleep there. Because I was like, if I leave him, he'll die. That's all I knew. And it's like, I'm never leaving until I can leave with you and go home with you. I don't know. I mean, yes, it was really hard. It was the loneliness of it that was so difficult. It was the fighting everyone because I thought, no, you're not going to hurt him more. Because you feel like the medical profession should be your friend, but they didn't have any answers. So I'm like, well, then you can't help me. So let's not pretend that you can. But then who can? I mean, oh my God, the things we tried, we tried Ayurvedic, we tried everything to see if there was a solution. So it kind of tempered me. I became very, very strong off the back of that. And I learned in a way that was contrary to my culture, actually, because like an upper class Indian girl is not taught to have independent thought. It's just not recommended highly. You're taught to, smile sweetly, get educated, get married. And I
would say at a time, every girl in India was upper
well, I
middle,
would say,
doesn't matter. At a
across
time,
the
that was
world.
the case,
And so I had to teach myself that my opinion mattered, that what I thought mattered. And I don't know that I still will, well, actually not even I don't know. I know I would never have fought for myself in the way I fought for him. That was what I found really interesting. I would never have fought for myself. I'd have put up with so much more rubbish. I fought for him in a way I wouldn't for me.
Why do you think that was the case? Why do you think we do that as humans, from your point of view?
I think that there's two things to that. One, I think women are not brought up to think that what they need and want matters, because society feels like if women don't have an idea of what they need and want, society will function easier. And so we are definitely brought up as women, not just as Asian women, but as women, to not give credence to our beliefs and desires. So there's that. So I was always going to put myself second. And then after that, I think because the kind of love that you feel for someone that is helpless and reliant on you makes us into heroes. That we will do so much more for them. Because you kind of grow to occupy that space, don't you? I never felt like a hero, to be fair. I felt like an idiot constantly.
But you're a hero to your son.
Don't ask him now. We're
Yeah.
doing late teens. I'm not sure.
Right now, you're the one holding him down.
Yeah, exactly.
20 years later,
I'm
you'll be
misunderstanding
like, thank
him.
you, Mom. Thank you, you were there. Because I would have made my life garbage without that. But anyways, jokes apart, isn't it that it's so fascinating and interesting that we would do things to contribute to somebody else's life, but we would not do that for ourselves? Is there a point in life where, as you were realizing that, wow, I'm doing this for my son, I'm doing this for my kid, and it's of course helping him and currently helps him as well, there was a point in their life where he said, I probably should be taking care of myself as well?
So it's funny you should say that, because I then went on and had 2 more kids, and I got divorced. And I got divorced again because my marriage with my son's father didn't survive my hospital visits. And it's a really common occurrence that major illness really takes its toll on marriage. So then I had 2 more kids, and apparently I'm really bad at being married, so I ended up divorced. And I was there, oh God, I was so young. I think I just turned 30, and I had 3 kids under the age of 7. And I was the sole breadwinner. And my family was very unwelcoming about the fact that I had not followed what they had wanted me to follow. And I kept getting divorced. So they were basically rejected any desire to help me. They managed to subdue all those desires to help me out. And I ended up in a place where there was no one but me to do everything I was doing. And I took something, I can't remember what it was, because I was in health and wellness. So I kept testing everything. And there was this, I think it was something ridiculously normal, like an MSM powder or something. And I reacted to it and I got really sick. And I was throwing up and I was ill, and I was ill for like 3 or 4 days. And actually, eventually, they had to call an ambulance to take me to hospital because I was so dehydrated. And I was like, I have to leave in an hour to pick up the kids from school. And this nurse was like, you're just not going anywhere. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. There was literally no one else to pick up my kids. And then I sat there and she was like, yeah, nice try, sweetie. And I in the accident emergency of this hospital, I was like, oh my God, if I die, the people that will look after my kids is my ex-husband or my mother. That's a terrible idea, because I don't want either of them anywhere looking after my kids. And that was the moment I was like, we're done. I have to matter. But again, it was backwards, right? I have to matter to be here for them. It took me a much longer journey to matter because I mattered for me. So yeah.
And what was that journey like? Where you finally realized that you need to matter for yourself?
Friggin' took me 15 years, I have to tell you. It took me a very long time. You know, but in a way it's what I teach now, but it's understanding power and the power that you have within you when you are 100% in alignment with your needs and desires and wants is a very unfeminine thing. You know, women find power very uncomfortable. They don't find power comfortable. We're not attracted to it naturally. It's a very masculine thing. Men want to feel powerful. They feel power physically, and then they go for mental power, and then they go for abundance, like monetary power, financial power. Women don't really do that. We don't think like that. But I've always been very attracted to power because I've always felt so vulnerable and helpless. And like in my family, I just had to shut up and smile. You know, in my marriage, I had to take on the responsibility that my son was sick because of me, when everybody knew that wasn't true. And I was always being put in a place where if I would just shut up, it would all be okay. And I was like, let's just not do that. I'm really not a fan of this. So I remember thinking when all this happened, and more terrible things happened, because as the breadwinner of 3 small kids, trying to put your kids through school in England is very painful, you know, and I had the worst divorce in the world. Everything was horrendous. And I was like, there's something really not working here. Whatever it is I'm doing in my life, I'm really bad at it. I was bad at lifing. And so I put a flag in the ground and I was like, never again. What do I need to do? And more importantly, who do I need to be for this to never happen to me again? And I realized that what I had to do and be was to have my own power. Because as I said, I grew up very wealthy. I spent a lot of time around a lot of powerful people. I had very powerful clients because I had now started my health and wellness business. My first client was Gwyneth Paltrow. So I was surrounded by celebrities and I saw the power they had. Everybody around me had power but me. And I was like, okay, mine. How do I get my power? How am I going to be powerful? And it took me a really long time. And it's really interesting because I'm a very powerful person, not a very powerful woman. I'm a very powerful person, and I really love that about myself. But it took a lot of space and time and effort, and unpacking of my unconscious biases to kind of get there.
I want to know more. I want to give you a little context of why I want to know more. So our listeners tend to be coaches or trainers in the world. That's our podcast called Master Coaching. Our followers tend to be individuals who are very much aligned to wanting to do something useful for the world. They want to contribute to society. They're kind of driven, somewhat like you, early stage, where you were driven to find the best resources to help your children. They are driven to say they've kind of usually had some kind of comfort in life. They're usually pretty okay wealth-wise. They can take care of themselves. Mm-hmm. And at the same point in time, they struggle because they're either transitioning or have transitioned careers to go from doing something that probably is very mainstream, like owning a business or having a great executive career or something, to now saying, that's all cool, and I want to do something more meaningful.
Yeah.
Right? And the biggest transition gap, or one of the biggest transition gaps that we find at that time, is them being able to really own that they are powerful and they can actually create change for somebody else. And that's why, context-wise, that's why I wanted to set that up, because I want to find what is it that was finally that moment, that story, that event, that thing that got you to go, this is why I'm going to turn. This is what's going to make me, or finally get you aligned to what you ended up doing eventually, which is to help people live a more healthier, more balanced life. What was that? Where was that moment of power where Geeta found her power for herself? Or if not, if you don't remember the event, that's okay. If you know, what was the thing that got you to feel your power or finally lean into your personal power?
It's a little peculiar. So firstly, I don't necessarily know that I teach people to be healthy and well. I kind of do in my core coaching. But what I do is I have two different kinds of clients, right? Mm-hmm. I have the kind of alpha type client, and they're mainly female, but they're male, and they're the British royal family. I like the Duchess of York as a client. I have massive NDAs. I have a president. I have people that own the biggest franchises of TV. I've got, studios will send me execs and go, here, can you fix him and send him back? And I'm like, okay. So I have that kind of client, and then I have just the women, right? Like, let me make you powerful. Let me help you. Let me do whatever we're doing. And the thing about it is that what happened for me is that because of the family I grew up in, it has this really uncomfortable sensation of I was always memorable. And I think being memorable is a curse and a blessing, because you don't know what you're going to be memorable for, right? Until you realize that there's a space where the accountability of what you accept for memorability should be your choice. So for me, the difference was this. When I realized that I wasn't a victim for anybody, or at least I decided not to be, that everything was going to be, it sounds so simple, but everything was going to be my choice for me, how I wanted. That was the first step. But then I had to accept my visibility. And I think what we struggle with is we think we can have impact, but being visible in today's age is very frightening because it attracts massive amounts of criticism. In fact, I've been cancelled globally, like on all kinds. It's horrendous. It's really a painful exercise. And you have to still believe that that you were born for a purpose, I think, for you to want to absorb that and think, okay, no, it still matters to me. And you get tested, right? I believe that the universe tests you with all this stuff 3 times on everyone is what I've realized. And so we were running a campaign in Britain to leave the European Union because we had temporarily taken leave of our senses, and we thought that was a really great idea. And I remember that somebody came to me and said, can you join this campaign? And I was like, sure. Massively politically activated, grew up in a dictatorship, anything political, I'm with you. And so I joined this campaign, and I had some friends on the campaign, and it was like very high. I was literally the most unknown person on this board. Everybody else was either political activist or famous or had built up Innocent Drinks. The CEO of Innocent was there, the CEO of our largest telecom, all these people. And I would be looking at this going, why are we talking? What are we going to do? Why are we talking? Can we just do, and then eventually somebody was like, can you just run this? And I was like, well, I just don't want to. I want to go over there and like paint my nails or something. And the sheer fear I remember feeling up to here, the absolute panic of it. And then I was like, well, woman up. Either shut up or do the stuff. And I think for me, that was it. I think that I was like, okay, either yes or no. And then I said yes. And I was haunted and hunted and oh my God, the racism, the misogyny, the abuse, meh, and politics, they have long memories. They waited to come after me. They really did. But I made that choice then, and if that was worth fighting for everything, then it became which everybody's worth fighting for.
Very interesting. So one of your realizations is through a really painful journey, right? Literally leaning into your power while being canceled can be fun, right? Especially if you're already working with people that have tremendous amount of power, or they have some kind of reputation to hold on to. They don't want to work with a person where they are, the person getting canceled or whatever. I'm sure that definitely had some kind of effect on that, either good or bad. My curiosity is, so if there was someone, if you were to give an advice to someone that was listening to this conversation right now, and they might be going through a difficult time like you went through, what were some of your mantras, for the lack of a better word that I can think of in this moment, that you stuck by in that moment to say, this is how I'm going to stick with this? Like, I know I've made a decision, everybody's coming after me. What was the thing that kept Geeta alive in that moment, so you brace through that, and of course you have come out even stronger on the other end?
I don't know if it's one thing you say or the person you become. Like, I remember, because that space of being really poor with the kids when we first got divorced, because the majority of women, I think it's nearly 75% of women after a divorce, within the first year post-divorce, their resources and the money that they have drops to a third of what they had before. It's a very hard time. It's a very lonely time. And I think what I did was just be in a place where the only thing I could do, the only person I could rely on was me. And I knew I was lucky enough to be very rich, then very poor. And I knew exactly what I was available for. Does that make sense? Like, I know I can't be bought, but I might let you. You should totally try. Please be my guest, because it might be entertaining, but I can't be bought. I know I can't be persuaded. I can't be bullied. I know all those things about me because I was in those positions. So now when I look back and I think, why did all that crap happen to me? It was for those reasons. You get tempered, right? Like steel. So the person that I want everybody to be, the person that I strive to be still every single day, is a person that has such a deep knowledge about yourself that things aren't a surprise when they come at you. When you've unpacked your own crap, then the stuff that comes at you is not new. So you already know what you're going to do. I've got my GPS sorted. I don't need something to come in. Does that make sense? I don't need something to come in and explain to me do you think she'll react like this or this? No, you know how I'm going to react. You're always going to know on any level. Even if you spend 4 minutes on my social media, you'll know how I'm going to react. And I'm that person, whoever you are and wherever I am. And it's very liberating.
I think there's the power of what you just said. For me, what's resonating the most is you're a very aware person. Like, you've just said, hey, listen, I know exactly who I am.
Yeah.
In these different stages, different circumstances. I know exactly how I'd respond to things. I know I'm certain about who I am, certain about what I am, certain about where am I going, probably as well as a consequence of who you are and what you are. And that gives you a sense of clarity, a sense of knowingness in a way.
It does. Now, to be clear, I'm deeply frivolous. I have a very stupid sense of humor, and there are places where, I deeply believe in the incredible lightness of being. I don't think you should be intense and serious. I swear like a trooper, constantly. I don't know you well enough to do that, so we're not doing that. And generally on TV, I also don't. But I think that you need to have that sense as well, where not to take yourself seriously. I'm deeply shy around certain things, and I get very, very shy, and I'm like, like, this is really good. If this is a room full of 10 people, I'd be in a corner quietly going, oh my God, don't say anything, So I think that I'm just a rounded human being. I do have, though, insane clarity about myself. And I believe that that is the most important thing. And I do that daily. There's always a part of ourselves, Ajit, that I think that we hide. It's that bit that when you're little, something happens. It's my usual story is that you're 4 years old, you're in a playground, and a redheaded boy comes, hits you on the head, and walks off with your toy. 45 years later, you're like, I don't like redheads. I just don't know why I don't like redheads. But what you're actually doing is there's a part of you put away because you felt scared and you felt vulnerable when that part of you was shown, and you hid that part away. And what happens is no matter how successful you become, you're always the rubber banded back to that most insecure part of you. What I will always do is open that part of me up and go, what is that? Why is that? How is that? No, let's pull that up. And I'm constantly opening that part of myself and my clients with, because I have a lot of clients who do lots of really important things. And I'm like, let's just pick up the very worst of you and let's see what happens when you look at it. What's the worst that can happen?
That's so true. And you're so right. Having a lightness about knowing that sometimes you'll find something about you that's just silly, and that's perfectly okay. There's a recent exercise I was doing with my team. Is an exercise in creating personas online called as character diamond. It comes from movies. That's how movie characters are created. They follow this exercise called character diamond. And I've struggled to really know what is my character online, because I'm like you. I have so many different things. I also tend to have a pretty sarcastic sense of humor, which if you don't know me, you would think I'm just being an ass. Like, that's true. Like, it'll sound like you're an ass, but I just am sarcastic and I'm being light and funny. But if you don't know me, it's not going to land very well. So there were like elements of me, and I was like, I don't know which one is actually something that is common enough or trendy enough or present enough that I can say, well, not trendy, but more like it's something that you can put your, mind to saying Ajit is X. Like you could actually place
that you
me.
were comfortable.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with anything, but sometimes it's so broad that you don't know how to place the person. It's like if any human being, if we take all the characteristics and put them on a board, you will be a full board of many different things. Any human being, not just me, not just you, anybody, right? We have so many different things and experiences and blah, blah, blah in our life that there's no way of really determining a easy enough character to understand. And on social media or any platform like that, you get about 30 seconds, right? Where somebody goes, hey, do I understand, do I love you or not, right? So the timing is really too short for really, and we're not trying to build friendships either on social media, right? It's not like I'm saying my best friend is this Instagram profile called Abhijit XYZ, right? Or whatever that is. That's not how we are making
you just
friends
broken
either.
his heart, but
But that is actually my friend. No,
yeah, exactly.
But that's not how we make friends. So what we are really doing is creating attractive enough character or interesting enough character for somebody to say, I'm curious to know about this person because, whatever the way they talk seems resonant to me. What I was trying to do is trying to find out that about with my team, and what brought to my awareness, and I think that's what I'm really getting to, is self-awareness to me is also about having the world see you in a particular way. Like, for example, I never thought that my sarcastic sense of humor actually would land with somebody that doesn't know me. Like I've always, that even I said right now, it's like, I don't think it's going to land with people. But my team, because they looked at me from outside in, said, well, that is actually, it's one of the things in the character diamond where the opposite of your most common thing or more expected thing is whatever you present, which is, let's say, Ajit is a really good coach, or he's a, teaching savant, or whatever you want to call it. And the counter to that is that you talk about personal growth as if it's a joke in a way, right? Because sometimes I would say things that are personal growth oriented, but kind of are like, a little bit too out there. And it's like, okay, you can be light about it. You can be like, yeah, of course, I'm an emotionally regulated person. And I have a blow up with my wife. Doesn't make any sense. You're an emotionally regulated person. Why do you have a blow up with your wife, right? So stuff like that is what Character Diamond talks about. And that's where my team pointed out, dude, you can be light about that stuff and you talk about it all the time when people know you. I think you should just make it more obvious to people. And I think they will love you for it, or at least that will be the most honest and you don't have to think about it. So at least it'll be, real and easy for you to say, hey, listen, I can balance this out. It's who I am. And I think that was powerful for me to be able to ask somebody and say, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about me? Because I don't know how I show up for people or how am I received. What do you think about that? Have you done an exercise like that, or would you be curious to?
So I've been in the public eye for 20 something years. Allow me to assure you that happens to me daily.
without you asking.
Without any requirements whatsoever. I daily get judged on the size of my ass, on the size of my conversations, on how I look, don't look. So you're very privileged for you to not have that happen to you. I think you need to be a girl on social media and it will happen to you daily, Ajit, freaking daily. So it's just not a problem.
Yeah. Does that happen to women more?
I'm a woman, so it's hard for me to answer that question, but yes, I think so. I would do massive political debates. I've done political debates that have been watched by 3, 4, 5 million people. And I had somebody go, that red just isn't such a nice color on you. And what we do is we use this as a trope very often. It's like it's a skill set which we use to undermine women, because what we do is we reduce women to how they look visually more than anything else. Which is why Kim Kardashian and their family just crack me up all the time, because they took that visual and made it into a $1 billion empire. I'm like, you go, girls, all of you go. But women are constantly gaslit in the public eye on how they look. And it's just there's no way around that. So so I think it happens to women a lot, because no one's going to judge you on your wrinkles. I don't think you have any, but no one's going to give a shit, or if you're fat or not fat. But 100% for every woman, you are judged a large percentage on how you look.
Do you think it's only men that judge women, or women also judge women?
One of the things is that because society is traditionally actually run by men make the majority of the decisions, and men are deeply visual. What I think is that's where it comes from. We're judged on how we look because men are so deeply visual. Now, when you come out of that, the women that are going to judge you on how you look, it's because we have an unconscious bias towards making a decision on your value based on how you look. And so everybody judges you on how you look.
Women have an unconscious bias. Is that what you're saying?
Everybody has an unconscious bias.
Everybody has an
I think
unconscious
everybody has an unconscious bias. We have a great exercise we run with people. We have 2 exercises. One is where we take you through making it, and I've done this from stage as well, where you take 3. Usually I have large audiences of women, so usually it'll be 3 women, and I'll have 1 woman to represent a tribal view, 1 to represent a cultural view, 1 to represent an individual view. And I'll give them things to talk about, like their bodies or men or whatever, and force them to come at it from a tribal, cultural, individual view. And the most interesting thing about that is their views are all the same. There'll be 23, 40, and 60 will have the same views. It'll have the same, and it's terrifying. Because we think we're individual.
I don't understand. What do you mean by...
So, for example...
They'll have the same views, yeah.
So I did this exercise last Friday. I was on a stage, and I had 3 women up there, and I was being very mindful, right? So the tribal woman was half black. The cultural woman was Indian, because I put an English woman up there, and she couldn't quite do it. But the Indian was like, I got this. And then there was a 23-year-old blonde girl over here. And I was like, all right, everybody tell me your view on what your body needs to be like. By tribal, I mean like my 19-year-old will say, Mama, I need lip filler because my lips are crooked. You're 19. You don't need bloody lip filler. But you do, because on social media, your face looks peculiar and everybody's measuring it. And so that's her tribe. Okay? If you look at it that way, by tribe. So the tribal woman, I was like, what does your body have to look like? She said, I'm 42. I'm not attractive anymore. I don't know. Next to her was a 50-year-old Indian woman. I said, culturally, what should your body look like? And she said, oh, my body needs to be, like Bollywood. I need to be curved and thin. And she went like this. And I'm like, what was that? She goes, no. I'm like, what was that? She goes, I have to be fair. But I have to be thin, but I have to be fair. Then I went to the 23-year-old and I'm like, what does your body have to look like? What's the individual representation of you as a 23-year-old? She goes, I have to be thin and strong, and I have to be thin. What is that? If that's not an unconscious bias running through us as a sex, and that's implicated by what we are valued as in society, right? That is making you powerless. Those views keep you powerless. That's what I mean by not having the power and the understanding. So when you put people through these exercises, it's a really interesting exercise in understanding how you judge yourself without understanding where that judgment came from. Yeah?
Yeah, no, I get it. I understand now. So I'm just curious about it because I understand and I relate to that, and not relate in the sense I'm not a woman, but I relate to that in the sense I think I've had such experiences, if expressed in that way or a different way, where there's an expectation, which is unconscious expectation that we create, mostly because of the work that I do with people. Where is it that you feel as a society, and do you feel as a society, we are becoming more accepting of that every person is so individualized that you cannot put a standard and you shouldn't put a standard? And if not, then what do you think we need as a society to get to that place?
I don't think we're doing that. I think that that's luxury brought about by education and money, that you can make choices, that you can allow yourself to think that. And I think that the less money you have, the less education you have, the more female you are and the darker you are, those choices inherently disappear into thin air. I think that that's how that works, because when you are not in a pinnacle of society being able to make those choices, then you're at the bottom of society where the choices are made for you. I think we shouldn't misunderstand that. I think it sounds nice for us to have these conversations and do whatever, but the majority of people have never been in a place where they couldn't feed their children tomorrow, let alone today. And I have been in that position. I've also been in a position where I had my own private plane. So I've been uniquely positioned, thank you, universe, to look at the difference between the two. And I infinitely preferred the rich version, I should just say. If anybody's wondering, the rich is nicer. But those are conversations that are intellectual and don't allow for the fact that we as a society literally take away choices from people when they can't support those choices, often by the amount of money that they have or the freedom that they have. And we pretend that they have it, because the more expression we can give, the more we attribute freedom to those expressions. But they're not true. For many people, they're not true. And the poorer you are and the darker you are, the less true it becomes. And the more female you are. Like in a recession, for example. We're going too political? But in a recession...
No, I'm thinking because...
No,
I don't know if I agree, but
I'm happy for
you
to disagree.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's part of it. We should disagree with these views. But, you know, I sit in rooms where decisions are made, and I will be in rooms with a lot of white men, and there's prime ministers and presidents and all these people sitting in these rooms. And I know I'm the only non-white person in that room, and I'm frequently the only woman in that room. I mean, like frequently, like so much of the time. And they'll have these conversations. We make a decision. I'll be like, so I just wanted to say, just give me a moment. And I'll be the one going, so what about the brown person? What about the woman? What about the poor person? Because those decisions they're not taken into account. They're not taken into account. What do we call the common good? The greater good? What does that mean? Who's it for? You know, I just think that a self-expression is a lovely thing, but it's fake. I do think it's fake. I think that it comes about from you trying to find a reason to feel special when you don't feel free. That's what I think. So I don't know that that's a necessarily popular opinion, but I feel that. And in a lot of the work that I've done, I've seen that. Having said which, I think the countermeasure to that is for you to feel a sense of power and autonomy over your choices as much as you possibly can. And that's why I wake up every day and do what I do. Because if I can help you as the most powerful, the richest, the most intelligent person in your universe to feel powerful, you don't have to put somebody down to feel powerful. You'll feel powerful within yourself. And that is a massive freedom for everyone around you as well.
I hear you. I agree to some degree, and I don't agree to some degree. And the disagreement that I have, and I cannot speak for women because I'm not one of them or one of you. But what I can say is, for when I was poor, which I was for most of my life, I grew up in a household with, one bedroom with everybody living together, the way you grow up in India sometimes, or a lot of times, especially in that time when we didn't have abundance in India. Now we have a little bit more. I grew up in that scenario, and I think at any given time I had choices that I always made. They were not popular, but neither is any choice that anybody makes that is different to what the societal standards are. So I don't believe that you cannot make choices just because you're poor or color of your skin. You can make these choices. Again, I'm not talking about gender because I do not know anything about it, and I don't want to speak for a woman while I'm not one of them. So I can't say about women specifically, but I think you can always make a choice. It will not be accepted, and that will be true irrespective if you're rich or poor.
But that makes you A, unusual, and B, that's why you're sitting here.
No, but at the same point in time, what I'm trying to say is, and this could be just me being an optimist about society generally, and I'm okay with that. Not being not agreeing on certain things, I'm perfectly comfortable with that. But to me, I think as we grow, or no, grow in the sense of like just generally abundance wise, we are more abundant as a society than we have ever been. It's definitely true that richer are richer and poorer are poorer in some cases. But at the same time, there's a large middle class, especially if you go to a country like India. Suddenly the middle class is so large. It's amazing. And they're wealthy. They're not just middle class, they're upper middle class. In my time, that's how we would call them, right? So there's a transition of society and transition of power that happens not as fast as one would like, but at the same point in time, there is that transition. And when you lean into the transition, or when you at least hope that that transition happens and continue to contribute to it, there's a point that where we tip the society, or hopefully we'll be able to tip the society with the same rules that were applicable 100 years ago, which is probably what we're talking about, which is a white man runs the world and so forth, may tip at some point in the favor of equality in some way. And and I think, at least from my point of view, there is a consciousness that has already started to emerge, especially with the next generation, more so than this generation, the one that I belong to even, the one after us, is a lot more, because they don't feel free in the current setup of the society, like you said, they are more expressed because they want to be free. And because they're more expressed, hopefully the narrative pushes even further towards the direction where everybody can at least express, thanks to the crazy devices that we own, and is very accessible. It doesn't matter how poor or rich you are, you have a device that you can access. And I know that for sure, because you can go to ride a tuk-tuk in India and that guy's got a smartphone and he knows how to go live on Instagram as well. So you could have some expression and some ownership, and hopefully change can happen faster. So I'm kind of like, I'm like a little bit into what you're saying, and I agree that society as of now may not be at the pace that it needs to be for us to all be empowered in our own unique ways. At the same point in time, I think we are transitioning to that journey. I don't know, for that matter, I have some, and I could be flawed in this data, and so I'm not like, because data is data and it's, constructed the way we want to feel empowered or not, right? I was reading this data point where it said in 1970 or 1980, they took the census of how many women versus men are in the workforce. And they said at that time it was 60-40 or something like that. 60% men, 40% women were in working positions or were in jobs. The recent data that I last read was they're 54% females and 44% men if you talk about corporate environments. Right? So places of real power, if you really think about it. Now, it does not equate to people in full leadership positions like CEOs, but it also means that to be a CEO, it takes a 30-year career, right? Or a 20-year career. That's when you become a CEO most of the time, unless we're talking about small companies. I'm talking large corporations. It's 20, 30 years with the company. That's when you really become the CEO of the company. Yeah. It may be just a matter of time that you see the percentage flip the same way. That there would be a time where it would be, oh crap, we do have more CEOs that are female. I'm not saying it'll happen. What I'm saying is we're on the trend. If there's 54% females right now working versus 44% men in big corporations, there's a big possibility that at one point there will be 54% females as CEOs and 44% male as CEOs, because that's why there were white CEOs before, and now there are Indian CEOs in the Silicon Valley, if you really think about it.
It's very true. The trouble with that as a statistic is that when you have 54% women and 44%, whatever, 46% men, is that in that breakdown, the men will be earning more than the women. The men will be in more senior positions than the women. They will be in more decision-making processes than the women. So that statistic doesn't give you kind of the meat and the bones of the infrastructure underneath it. It's one of the reasons I'm such a fan of coaching, for example, because I think that the way coaching helps you to get liberated is like nothing else in the world, But you can, just because more women are working, there are statistics that will show you that traditionally high-paid jobs, like, for example, programming, the more women enter it, then the salaries go down. So there's statistics, it's literally a statistic. So there's statistics that show that even though there are more women in the workplace, where they traditionally are is at lower levels in the workplace as opposed to higher levels in the workplace. So for a woman to go through for a man to go through a 30-year career, I can sort of, you're doing that. For a woman to go through a 30-year career, if what she's doing is she wants to have a family, her 30-year career is going to take some massive speed bumps along the way. In England, for example, when you leave to go on maternity leave, your pension is finished. It's finished. You have to go back and start a new pension when you go back into the workforce. It's the stupidest thing in the whole world. We want women to go back to work. We need them to go back into work. But it's not set up for women to do that unless there's somebody else taking care of the kids. Mm-hmm. Right? So the majority of my clients, for example, especially in my one-to-one kind of higher end version, tend to be women that are the breadwinners or the highest earners in their families. Mm-hmm. And the only way these women have managed to make this work, the majority of them, is by leaving the corporates in order to set up their own businesses so that their businesses accommodate their family lives. Mm-hmm. But it's just not the same journey for a woman as it is for a man.
100%. And I'm never
trying. And therefore, she's not going to be the CEO in 30 years. It will take her, if she's going to do it, longer.
I would disagree with that, because here's what I'm not saying that those statistics may or may not be correct. They are correct, most likely, because you're stating them. And at the same point of time, like I said, a statistic can be diagnosed the way we want to diagnose it, right? You could cut the thing the way you want to cut it, right? That's the beauty and the pain of data. Is like you can present it to make sense for you. For me, and this could be totally an unconscious bias that I have towards women. Know that my team, by the way, is 90% women. There's only like 3 guys and the rest are all females that work with me. And so I have a bias towards hiring women for a very particular reason. I have not seen that would be unfair to men, but women tend to be better leaders.
Oh, 100%.
Because they are emotionally really sensible. They know exactly what's happening. They pick up things really fast. And when they want to get at something, they get at something. Like guys would mess around, fuck around.
No, they're
Women
focused.
just get at it. Yeah. When they want to get at it. When they don't want to get at it, they're like, yeah, whatever. We'll do it.
Dial me in.
You get, like,
no,
keep doing whatever you want to do.
I promise
when I'm in it, then I'm fucking in it.
But Ajit, I have literally a speech that I make that's called, "Why do we hire male CEOs and spend millions teaching them to think like a woman?"
In a way, you're right. You're literally right, because being a leader, being a CEO has very little to do with anything else than managing people really well.
And empathy and intuition and
which
communication.
Default
when you put a woman on, let me put you on an empathy communication course, she'd be like, really, bitch?
Yeah. I can teach you one course like that. It's because you're biologically wired to actually lead. Yeah. If you really think, and you're agreeing, so I'm glad you are, because I'm like, sometimes I get backlash on that, but I'm like, no, they're naturally they're naturally designed to be leaders and CEOs. If you really biologically, most women I've seen are more empathetic, they're more understanding, they can calibrate a lot more easier. When they have their moments, they have their moments. But other than that, 99% of the time, they can understand what's happening for the person right across the table, and they know what to do. Like a guy,
conflict resolution. Women are phenomenal at it.
They are I don't even know what the hell is happening. I don't know why this happened. Whereas a woman can say, exactly, I can tell you why that happened. Here is what it happened. Here's
and it started over there, by the way.
Yeah. So they have such great understanding of people that I don't think they need 30 years like a man. Because they don't need all that training.
But infrastructure is not set up in that way, which is why the pandemic was very good.
Yeah, but infrastructure changes by the container of
and
what
by
is the
women
content
setting
of the
up businesses. But this is why I'm so focused on women feeling powerful. The more powerful women feel, the more they'll create containers that work just for them.
Yes.
And then we'll get this shit will be blown up in the air. It's so old fashioned.
Yeah, I agree with. So we are on the same page on that, because I totally agree, and I think that's what's going to eventually happen for anybody that is kind of going, I'm not saying we still have a lot of work to do, of course. Of course we have to do a lot of work. But at the same time, we've already taken the right actions. It's going to take some time to manifest in reality, but I do think eventually the world is about female leadership, and we'll start to see it as soon as the next 10, 15, 20 years.
So let me change that a little bit, which is the world is not just about female leadership. The world will benefit from female leadership.
Yes, of course.
That's the thing. I think
the world will benefit most with the balance of female and male leadership. But 100%. I think we are going to go through
We have to go through the thing before
we tip it into balance.
Which is why I spend my whole life thinking, how many women can I make as powerful as I possibly can? Because there is a place where we need to stop waiting for someone to give that to us, and we need to start taking what it is that suits us and what we need. Like you were saying, you made those decisions. They weren't popular decisions, but you made them. right? And the decision-making process for women, when you've got small kids and you're not so rich and you're not sure what to do and you don't have time, it slows it down for you because you're afraid to take risks, especially when you're alone, with kids. So the more powerful you feel, the less risks will feel like they're risks. And you'll be more willing to do it.
Sorry for the cough. You're so right. So you're so right, and you're so on point. I think that's a great resolve that we can kind of come towards is how, not even how, like if we could find that within ourselves to be able to take greater risks, find more businesses, more setups where we are equally acknowledging of the male-female dynamic. I think on the men's side, we need a lot of work on being able to accept that, the leader of the house can be the woman. It doesn't have to be that they have to stay home. Or I'm not talking about me. I think my wife is very much the leader of the house and everything. Everybody knows that how she's the leader, and we are thankfully able to manage everything. But I think generally that's where I find men struggling, is like they go, oh, my wife makes more money than I do.
And men are hardwired to be providers, right? So I really sympathize with that. Yeah. But I found, honestly, almost 100% of time in my coaching, that the stronger women feel, the better their marriages do. The more powerful a woman does, the happier her husband is as well. And I think men don't understand that women feeling powerful makes them more available for a man to feel powerful.
Oh, so true. And I want to say this because it's so important in my life. I've been married once before, and then I found Nita. And one of the biggest realizations once I started dating Nita, and then of course now married to her, is that there is no way I was able to create the success of my life if I didn't have Nita as my partner.
100%.
And the biggest is not because, she's some supportive and she watches the kid or anything like that, because that's not true. But the thing is, because she's so powerful and she is so amazing in her own way, in her unique ways, how she shows up in the world and so on and so forth, that I am fired up because of that. Like, I am more driven, I'm more passionate, inspired. I want to do more, I'm inspired.
And then you can be more powerful if your partner's more powerful.
Yeah, because you get to play together at a level that otherwise I think you seek in other things outside, where else you're like, no, I could, like,
that is so
me
true.
Just having a conversation with Nita, I'm like pumped after that. I don't need anything else. I don't need any other thing, because my relationship fuels me in every way possible. So,
but you're the beautiful thing about listening to you say that is that you're showing up to be available for that, and she's showing up to be available for that, and you both have versions of your own power that doesn't need the other one to be small, and you can then both get bigger, right?
Yeah.
And that's not a male female thing. I think that the more powerful each partner is, the more powerful you both become together. And I think that that's beautiful.